human dignity and respect, regardless of how they look, where they come from, or how much money they appear to have. The moment we decide that someone's appearance gives us permission to treat them as less than human, we lose something essential about our own humanity. The Children's Future Foundation Gala is now held annually, and it has become known not just as a successful fundraising event, but as the place where an important conversation about dignity and respect began. Marcus and I still attend every year, and I still dress exactly as I choose, because I learned that night that true strength isn't about fitting in with people who judge you by your clothes. It's about standing up for what's right, even when you're dripping wet and surrounded by people who think you don't belong. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Probably deleting the videos they had been so eager to record and share just minutes before. Others were finding reasons to drift away from the pool area, suddenly remembering other conversations they needed to have, or drinks they needed to refresh. Marcus continued, his voice never rising but maintaining that authoritative tone that commanded attention. This event is supposed to represent the best of our community, people coming together to support children who need our help. Instead, it became an example of everything wrong with judging people based on appearances and wealth rather than character and kindness. As Marcus spoke, I found my own voice returning. The shock of being pushed into the pool was wearing off, replaced by a growing sense of my own strength and dignity. I stood up, Marcus's jacket still wrapped around my shoulders, and addressed the remaining crowd myself. "I want everyone here to understand something," I said, my voice steady, despite the fact that I was still dripping wet and shivering. What happened here tonight was about more than just me getting pushed into a pool. It was about the willingness of otherwise intelligent people to participate in cruelty when they think the target can't fight back. Some people in the crowd looked genuinely ashamed now. A few tried to approach with apologies, but I held up my hand to stop them. "I appreciate the sentiment," I continued, "but what I really want is for everyone to remember this moment the next time you're tempted to make assumptions about someone based on their appearance or economic status." The rest of the evening was subdued. Word of what had happened spread quickly through the ballroom, and people kept approaching Marcus and me with awkward apologies and expressions of support. The incident had clearly put a damper on the entire event, but ironically, it also seemed to refocus people on why they were actually there. Several donors increased their contributions after hearing about what had happened, saying they were inspired by the reminder that the event was supposed to be about helping children, not showcasing wealth. By the end of the night, the matching donation that Marcus had promised ended up being nearly 3 times what anyone had expected, thanks to the outpouring of support from people who wanted to make a positive statement after witnessing something so negative. 3 days later, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Victoria, her voice small and subdued, nothing like the confident cruelty she had displayed at the gala. She wanted to apologize, and to let me know that she had been asked to resign from several charitable boards as a result of her actions. The videos of her pushing me into the pool had indeed gone viral, but not in the way she had probably intended when she was playing to her audience that night. Instead of being celebrated for putting a supposed party crasher in her place, Victoria had become a cautionary tale about the dangers of judging people by their appearance. The comments on the videos were overwhelmingly critical of her behavior, with people sharing their own stories of being misjudged or mistreated based on how they looked. I accepted her apology because holding on to anger would have only hurt me, but I also made it clear that actions have consequences. She had chosen to escalate a situation into physical assault based on nothing more than her assumptions about my clothing and social status. That choice had rightfully cost her the respect and position she had used to hurt others. The experience changed me in ways I didn't expect. Instead of making me want to dress differently or try harder to fit into Marcus's world, it reinforced my commitment to authenticity. I realized that the problem wasn't with how I looked or how I chose to present myself. The problem was with a system that values appearance over substance and allows people to treat others as less than human based on superficial characteristics. Now, when I attend charity events or business functions, I dress exactly as I am comfortable. If I want to wear a simple dress and comfortable shoes, that's what I wear. If I want to carry my canvas bag or wear my grandmother's modest jewelry, I do that too. And if anyone has a problem with my choices, they're welcome to take it up with my husband, or, better yet, Examine why they think someone's worth as a human being should be determined by their clothing budget. Most importantly, that night taught me never to stand silently when I witnessed someone else being treated cruelly based on assumptions or prejudices. Every person deserves basic, down as they realized something significant was happening. Victoria, however, was still riding high on her social victory. "Oh, Marcus," she called out cheerfully, apparently not recognizing the danger in his expression. "Perfect timing. We just dealt with a little problem for you. Some crazy woman was claiming to be your wife and trying to crash your event. Don't worry, we took care of it." Marcus reached the edge of the pool and immediately knelt down, extending his hand toward me. "Sarah, are you hurt? Can you swim to the edge?" His voice was gentle when he spoke to me, completely different from the commanding tone he had used with the crowd. The use of my name sent a visible shock through the gathered spectators, and I could see Victoria's confident smile beginning to waver. I swam to the edge and took Marcus's hand, allowing him to help pull me out of the water. My dress clung to me uncomfortably, and I was shivering from both cold and shock. Marcus immediately shrugged off his tuxedo jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders, his arm going around me protectively as I stood dripping on the elegant stone terrace. The crowd had gone completely silent now, phones still recording, but the atmosphere completely changed. Victoria was staring at us with growing horror as the reality of the situation began to dawn on her. The other guests were looking between Marcus and me with expressions of confusion, recognition, and in some cases dawning embarrassment. Marcus turned to face the crowd, his arms still around me. "For those of you who don't know, this is my wife, Sarah Thompson. She was pushed into this pool by someone who decided that her appearance gave them the right to assault her at a charity event that exists because of our family's donation." The words fell like stones into still water. You could have heard a pin drop on that terrace. Victoria's face had gone completely white, all her earlier confidence and cruelty evaporating as she realized the magnitude of what she had just done. Other guests were looking away in embarrassment, probably remembering their own laughter and participation in my humiliation. Marcus wasn't finished. This event exists to raise money for educational programs that help underprivileged children develop their talents and find their voices. My wife dedicates her life to exactly that cause. She teaches art to kids who have been written off by people who judge based on appearances rather than character. She was late tonight because she was staying after school to help a child whose parents didn't show up for conferences. His words were delivered with quiet intensity, but they carried clearly across the silent terrace. I could see some people in the crowd looking genuinely ashamed now, perhaps remembering their own participation in the mob mentality that had led to my humiliation. Victoria looked like she wanted to disappear entirely, but she was trapped by the circle of people who had been her enthusiastic audience just minutes before. Victoria finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "Marcus, I didn't know. I thought she was lying. I thought I was protecting your event from someone who didn't belong." The words sounded hollow and desperate, a far cry from the confident cruelty she had displayed just moments before. "You didn't know," Marcus repeated, his voice still controlled but with an edge of steel. "You didn't know, so you decided to physically assault someone based on their clothing. You turned my charity event into a circus, where a group of people stood around recording the humiliation of a woman whose only crime was looking like she had more important things to do than spend thousands of dollars on a dress." The security team that managed events at the Grand View had arrived, probably alerted by the commotion. Marcus spoke briefly with them, and I watched as Victoria was quietly escorted away from the pool area. She was crying now, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks, but I felt no satisfaction in her downfall. I was too exhausted and humiliated to feel anything except relief that the ordeal was finally over. But Marcus wasn't done addressing the situation. He helped me to a chair and made sure I was comfortable before turning back to the crowd of onlookers who were still processing what they had witnessed. "Many of you stood here and watched my wife be assaulted," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the now silent terrace. "Some of you laughed. Some of you recorded it. Some of you participated in mob mentality that turned a charity event into a spectacle of cruelty." The silence that followed was deafening. People were looking at their phones, represent the best of our community, people coming together to support children who need our help. Instead, it became an example of everything wrong with judging people based on appearances and wealth, rather. "Looking for my husband. He's right over there," I gestured toward Marcus, but the woman barely glanced in his direction. Instead, she looked me up and down with barely concealed amusement. taking in my simple dress and practical shoes with obvious disdain. "Your husband," she repeated, her voice dripping with skepticism. "Honey, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. This is a very exclusive charity gala. The tickets cost $5,000 per person. Are you sure you're supposed to be here? Maybe you're thinking of a different event?" Her words were phrased as helpful suggestions, but her tone made it clear she was enjoying every moment of my apparent confusion. "I'm definitely at the right event," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the embarrassment creeping up my neck. "My husband is one of the sponsors." The woman's laugh was musical and cruel, loud enough that several nearby groups turned to see what was so amusing. "A sponsor?" she gasped between giggles. "Oh, sweetie, that's adorable. What does he sponsor? The valet parking? Maybe he's the one who arranged the catering." By now we had attracted a small audience. Other women in their designer gowns drifted closer, drawn by the entertainment of watching someone who clearly didn't belong being put in their place. I could see phones being discreetly pulled out, probably to capture whatever drama was about to unfold for their social media feeds. I felt trapped, humiliated, but also increasingly determined not to let this woman's cruelty go unchallenged. "I'd rather not get into the details," I said quietly, hoping to end the conversation and escape to Marcus's side. "But I assure you, I'm supposed to be here." The woman stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming, and her smile growing wider with malicious delight. "Oh no, now I'm really curious," she said loudly, making sure everyone within earshot could hear our conversation. "Tell us all about your husband's big sponsorship. What company does he work for? What's his contribution to tonight's cause?" Her questions were delivered with the precision of someone who knew exactly how to inflict maximum social damage. I could feel the eyes of at least a dozen people on me now, all waiting to see how I would handle this public interrogation. I glanced toward Marcus again, hoping to catch his eye and signal for help, but he was still deep in his business conversation, completely unaware of the social execution happening just yards away from him. I was on my own, facing down this beautiful, cruel woman and her growing audience of amused spectators. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. Instead of backing down or making excuses, I looked directly into her perfectly made-up eyes and said the words that would soon turn this entire evening upside down. "My husband is Marcus Thompson. He owns Thompson Industries, and he's the primary sponsor for tonight's event." The effect of my words was immediate and devastating. Instead of the shock or embarrassment I expected to see on the blonde woman's face, her expression transformed into something even more cruel. She threw her head back and laughed so loudly that conversations throughout the entire poolside area came to a halt. People turned from every direction to see what could possibly be so hilarious. "Marcus Thompson," she shrieked between fits of laughter, her voice carrying across the water like a siren. "Oh my God, everyone, come listen to this. This little nobody claims she's married to Marcus Thompson. You know, the billionaire tech mogul who's funding half of tonight's event. Her husband is Marcus Thompson." The crowd that had gathered around us grew larger, drawn by the spectacle of what they clearly saw as a delusional woman making outrageous claims. Other women in their glittering gowns began laughing along with her, their voices creating a chorus of mockery that echoed off the water. Someone in the back called out, asking what was so funny, and the blonde woman was more than happy to share. "She says Marcus Thompson is her husband," the woman announced to the growing crowd. "Apparently the billionaire tech genius is married to someone who shops at discount stores." The laughter intensified, becoming almost deafening. I could see at least 20 people now recording with their phones, probably thinking they were capturing some kind of hilarious social media content about a party crasher having a complete mental breakdown. My face burned with humiliation, but something deep inside me refused to back down. I had been telling the truth, and I wasn't going to apologize for it. "What's your name?" I asked the blonde woman, my voice steadier than I felt. "If you're going to publicly humiliate me, I'd like to know who's doing it." Her eyes lit up with malicious glee at the question. "I'm Victoria Ashworth," she announced proudly. "My family built half the businesses in this city. I've known Marcus Thompson since we were children. Our families vacationed together. We went to prep school together. I was even invited to his wedding." The word wedding hit me like a physical blow. She had been at our wedding? I tried to remember every face from that day, but it had been small and intimate, focused on family rather than Marcus's business connections. It was possible she had been there, maybe as someone Marcus felt obligated to invite because of family-business relationships. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, Victoria continued, her voice rising to ensure everyone could hear, that Marcus Thompson's wife is not some pathetic little wannabe in a discount store dress. His wife is elegant, sophisticated, and actually belongs in his world. She would never be caught dead looking like that at an event like this. The crowd was eating up every word. Some people were openly laughing and pointing at me now. Others looked uncomfortable but didn't speak up, probably afraid of becoming targets themselves. I felt completely alone, surrounded by dozens of people who had already decided I was either delusional or a liar trying to crash their exclusive party. That's when Victoria decided to escalate things even further. "You know what?" she said, her voice taking on a theatrical quality that suggested she was really enjoying her audience. "I think our little wannabe here needs a reality check. Maybe a nice cold splash of water will help her remember where she actually belongs." The suggestion sent a ripple of excited anticipation through the crowd. People pressed closer, phones held high to capture whatever was about to happen. I suddenly realized that Victoria wasn't just planning to embarrass me with words anymore. She was positioning herself between me and the pool, her intentions becoming terrifyingly clear. "Wait," I said, taking a step backward. "There's no need for this to escalate. Just call Marcus over here, and we can clear this whole thing up in 30 seconds. But Victoria was clearly past the point of reasonable conversation. She had an audience. She had momentum, and she wasn't going to let this opportunity for social domination slip away. "Call Marcus over here," she mimicked, her voice taking on a mocking baby talk tone. "Oh, sweetie, Marcus Thompson doesn't associate with people like you. He's over there having important conversations with actual successful people, not playing along with some delusional nobody's fantasy life." Before I could react, before anyone in the crowd could intervene, Victoria placed both hands on my shoulders and shoved me backward with surprising force. I felt myself falling, arms windmilling desperately as I tried to maintain my balance, but there was nothing to grab onto. The last thing I saw before hitting the water was Victoria's triumphant smile, and the crowd of people holding up their phones to record my humiliation. The water was shockingly cold, closing over my head as I plunged beneath the surface. For a moment, I was completely disoriented, not sure which way was up. When I finally surfaced, gasping and sputtering, the sound that greeted me was even worse than the initial laughter. The entire poolside area had erupted in applause and cheering, as if Victoria had just performed some kind of heroic act by pushing me into the water. Someone yelled out, "That's what happens when you lie about being someone you're not." Another voice added, "Maybe next time you'll think twice before crashing parties where you don't belong." The laughter and commentary continued as I treaded water, my dress soaked and heavy, my hair plastered to my head, completely humiliated in front of at least 50 people who were treating my assault like entertainment. Victoria stood at the edge of the pool, basking in the approval and laughter of the crowd. She looked down at me with mock concern and called out loudly, "Oh no! Did you get your discount store dress wet? I hope it doesn't shrink." More laughter erupted at her comment, and I could see people sharing the videos they had just recorded, probably already uploading them to social media with captions about karma and party crashers getting what they deserved. That's when I heard a different sound cutting through the laughter and commentary. It was a voice I recognized, filled with a fury I had never heard before. "Everyone step back from the pool. Now." The commanding tone was so sharp and authoritative that the laughter began to die down. People turned to see who was speaking with such authority at their exclusive gathering. Marcus was striding across the terrace with a purpose and intensity that made people instinctively move out of his way. His face was a mask of controlled rage, and the 3 men who had been in conversation with him were following close behind, looking confused but concerned. The crowd that had been so animated just moments before began to quiet. Matching every dollar raised at the event, potentially doubling the foundation's annual budget, the gala was being held at the Grandview Country Club, one of those exclusive venues where membership costs more than most people's houses, and the waiting list stretches for decades. Marcus had been traveling constantly in the weeks leading up to the event, finalizing deals in London and Tokyo, so he asked me to handle the final details with the event coordinator. I should have realized this would put me in direct contact with people who had no idea who I was. The day of the gala, I spent the morning at school finishing up parent conferences and helping organize our spring art show. I had planned to go home and change into the elegant dress Marcus had bought me for these occasions, but one of my students, a shy 8-year-old named Tommy, had a complete meltdown when his parents didn't show up for his conference. I spent an extra 2 hours with him, helping him work through his disappointment and ensuring he got home safely. By the time I finished at school, I was already running late for the gala. I looked at myself in my classroom mirror and made a quick decision. I was wearing my favorite navy blue dress, the one that made me feel confident and comfortable. It wasn't designer, but it was clean and appropriate. My shoes were simple black flats that I could stand in all day without pain. My jewelry was minimal, just my wedding ring and small pearl earrings that had been my grandmother's. Looking at my reflection, I saw exactly what I wanted to see. A woman who valued substance over style. Someone who had spent her day making a difference in a child's life rather than primping for a social event. I had no idea that this practical choice would soon make me the target of the most humiliating experience of my adult life. The Grandview Country Club looked like something from a fairy tale that night. Thousands of twinkling lights were strung between ancient oak trees, creating a canopy of stars above the outdoor terrace. The pool area had been transformed into an elegant cocktail space with floating candles and flower arrangements that probably cost more than I made in a month. Inside, the ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and gold accents that caught the light from every angle. As I walked through the entrance, I should have felt proud. This was my husband's event, his generous donation making this magical evening possible. Instead, I immediately felt out of place among the sea of designer gowns and glittering jewelry. Women floated by in dresses that looked like they belonged on red carpets. Their hair styled to perfection, their makeup applied by professionals who probably charged more for one evening than I spent on groceries in a month. The men were equally polished in their custom tuxedos and expensive watches that caught the light as they gestured during conversations about stock portfolios and yacht purchases. Everyone seemed to know everyone else, air-kissing and laughing about shared vacations to places I'd only seen in travel magazines. I tried to remind myself that I belonged here, that my husband was the reason this event was possible, but it was hard to ignore the obvious wealth gap. I made my way toward the terrace, hoping to find Marcus among the crowd of donors and board members. The poolside area was even more intimidating than the ballroom. Groups of women clustered together like exclusive clubs, their voices carrying across the water as they discussed their latest shopping trips to Paris and their children's acceptances to Ivy League schools. The conversation stopped when I passed, replaced by whispered assessments of my outfit and obvious speculation about how someone like me had gained entry to such an exclusive event. I finally spotted Marcus near the bar, deep in conversation with several men in expensive suits. They were probably discussing the matching donation he had promised, working out the logistics of doubling whatever the evening raised. I started walking toward him, weaving between clusters of guests who barely acknowledged my presence. I was about 20 feet away when a voice behind me stopped me cold. "Excuse me, but I think you might be lost." The voice belonged to a striking blonde woman who looked to be in her early 30s. She was tall and elegant, wearing a shimmering gold dress that probably cost more than my car. Her hair was styled in perfect waves, her makeup was flawless, and she carried herself with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're at the top of the social food chain. Her smile was dazzling and completely fake. I turned to face her, trying to match her friendly tone. "Oh, hi there. I'm not lost, just..." I'll never forget the day a blonde socialite pushed me into a pool at an exclusive charity gala and everyone laughed. She had no idea I was married to the billionaire who was funding the entire event. What happened next will leave you speechless. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah, and today I'm sharing the most shocking and humiliating moment of my entire life. This story changed everything about how I see people and how I carry myself in this world. It's about standing up for yourself when no one else will, and discovering strength you never knew you had. Let me take you back to that terrible night that transformed my perspective forever. My name is Sarah Thompson, and I'm 26 years old. My life today is nothing like what people assume when they discover I'm married to one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. Just 3 years ago, I was a struggling art teacher at an inner-city school, living paycheck to paycheck in a cramped studio apartment that barely had enough room for my easel and paintbrushes. I spent my weekends at local farmers markets, selling my paintings for whatever people could afford, sometimes as little as $20 for pieces that took me weeks to complete. I wore the same 3 dresses to every school function, patched holes in my shoes with fabric paint, and survived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches more often than I care to admit. But I was passionate about teaching kids that art could be their escape, their voice, their hope for something better. That's how I met Marcus Thompson. He walked into my classroom on a rainy Thursday afternoon, not as the Marcus Thompson who owned Thompson Industries, a tech empire worth over $4 billion, but as a volunteer mentor for our after-school program. He had signed up under just his first name, Marcus, and wore simple jeans and a plain sweater that looked like he'd grabbed them from any department store clearance rack. For 2 months, he came every Tuesday and Thursday, helping kids with their math homework and listening to their dreams with genuine interest. He never mentioned his work, never flashed expensive gadgets, never talked about money or success. He just showed up consistently, bringing snacks for the kids and treating each one like they mattered. I fell for his kindness before I ever knew about his bank account. When Marcus finally asked me out, it was to a tiny Italian restaurant where we shared a pizza and talked for 4 hours about everything except his real identity. It wasn't until our 5th date, when he picked me up in a car that clearly cost more than my annual salary, that I started asking questions. Even then, he waited 3 more dates before telling me he was the Marcus Thompson, whose company had just gone public and made headlines for revolutionizing cloud computing. Our relationship moved quickly after that revelation, but not because of his wealth. Marcus loved that I saw him as just Marcus, not as a walking dollar sign or a ticket to a different life. I loved that despite having the power to buy anything he wanted, he chose to spend his free time teaching kids fractions and listening to their problems with patience and genuine care. When we got married 14 months later, it was a small ceremony in my hometown with just our families present. But adjusting to life as a tech billionaire's wife has been the most challenging thing I've ever done. Marcus always encourages me to stay true to myself, to keep teaching, to wear whatever makes me comfortable. He says my authenticity is what drew him to me in the first place. That's beautiful in theory, but when you're suddenly expected to attend charity galas and board meetings where everyone else is wearing clothes that cost more than most people's cars, staying authentic feels like swimming upstream. I still shop at discount stores, still wear my comfortable flats and simple dresses, still carry the canvas messenger bag I bought at a thrift store 5 years ago. Marcus says these things make me special, that my refusal to change for his world is exactly what he loves about me. But sometimes, being authentic in a world that values appearance over substance comes with consequences I never anticipated. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. About 4 months ago, Marcus became the primary sponsor for the annual Children's Future Foundation Gala, a massive fundraising event for educational programs in underserved communities. The foundation was close to both our hearts because it funded exactly the kind of programs where we had met. Marcus was donating $2 million and had committed to